And as all of you are flowing in into this session, we are just setting up. We have our panelists joining us, our chair joining us. So thank you so much, everyone, for engaging and being a part of this entire virtual conference experience. And I'm sure you have been going all around the conference. You've been visiting the exhibit hall, looking at the resources, creating your own swag bag, and definitely in contention for that Xbox in that leaderboard contest. So thank you so much. Welcome to this next session on performance management cracking the code. I would request a panelist to be on mute, please. Great. So this session, we're really talking about how performance management is geared towards maximizing people development, improving the performance of individuals, and enable the organization. And all this within the context of enablement through technology. But there are so many questions that each of the leaders who, all of you who are attending, and all our panelists come across every day, every moment when you think of performance management. Are the performance development approaches effective at supporting employees adapt to change? How do you integrate feedback with ratings and compensation? Can you measure performance without appraisals? Can you generate real-time tracking of performance? So these are some of the questions that we come across when we speak to a lot of leaders, and we thought that we put this panel together to discuss these questions and try and see if we can crack this code today. We have the privilege to invite Vijay Gandhi, who is the Regional Director, EMEA for Ferry, as the chair for this session. Vijay has worked in HR advisory and services field for over 17 years and has experience in managing pay and benefits databases in over 50 countries and leveraged this market knowledge to provide informed advice to the organizations. Vijay will be leading this discussion in this session. So let me take this opportunity to hand it over to Vijay and invite him to introduce our panelists and take the session forward. Over to you, Vijay.
Thank you very much. Well, it's my privilege to be here today and lead the panel discussion. Let me start by sharing a thought around the workplace and how it has changed over the last 10 to 15 years. If we think about the workplace 15 years ago, even the first iPhone wasn't launched, and there was no app for that. We were still in our cubicles, open floor plans hadn't become very common, and people weren't obscured with the idea of cloud. So in terms of the changes which we have seen, certainly smart devices, cloud-based platforms, and the way we work has really transferred over the last decade, at least. If we look then how that has impacted the way we operate and the performance management processes which organizations have, there has been very few changes around the traditional performance management processes as we have seen with standard ratings and traditional ways of annual appraisals. The world isn't on an annual cycle anymore, as we know, and we have seen constant changes in both the internal and external environment around me and you. So it's my privilege to lead the discussion with Manu and Nisheeth, who have joined us to this panel discussion. Manu Narang Wadhwa is head of HR, India and Southwest Asia for the Coca-Cola company. Manu currently heads human resources and services for Coca-Cola. In her current role, she's steering the people and workplace agenda around nurturing an ecology wherein extraordinary talent drives the collective success of the Coca-Cola system. Welcome, Manu. The second panelist we have to join today is Nashik Potter, head of OE at Commercial Bank of Dubai. In his current role as head of organizational effectiveness at CBD, a leading bank in UAE, Nisheeth is responsible for creating high performance culture and leads the HR transformation, performance and rewards, learning and development, HR operations and technology, and employee engagement for the bank. So welcome, Nisheeth. Let me start with the first question for Manu. How has performance management helped drive the culture shift at Coke?
Thanks a lot, Vijay, for the question. And for everyone who's watching us, thank you so much for joining. I hope you enjoy the session and more importantly, take learnings or experiences back from our conversations. Uh, as I would define my company, I would first give a backdrop before responding to your question, Vijay, around the company and where it is headed today. We're a 131 years old organization with presence in almost 200 plus countries across the globe, serve 1.9 billion servings per day, and somebody or the other right now must be having a Coke product. I can vouch for us in the call or in the video chat today. And this legacy has really made us as the beverage provider of choice for millions and millions of customers across the globe. With the legacy of 130 plus years, there comes a time in an organization's time when you need to drive a cultural shift to be more closer to the consumer, which is what happened in the last few years, and also reignite its purpose to say, what do we stand for? So, in the spirit of the cultural shift that has happened in the last couple of years, wherein we have re envisioned our purpose to be a beverages for life provider, in which any of you who starts your day at 6 in the morning, wraps it up by 10 at night, we want to be there at every time when you have a hydration need, non alcoholic. And this shift literally means that I need to know very clearly what do you drink, what do you have at these points of time, which means my innovation machine needs to be agile. I need to be more closer to you, listen to you as a consumer, and at the same time provide you what you need at different points of time in your day life. As we think about this cultural shift to broad base our consumer portfolio and array, the cultural shift has also pushed us to think differently about the DNA we have had in the company. With the strength of 500 plus brands and being amongst the most loved brands across the globe, you can imagine that the DNA also develops itself to say, we have been there, we have done that. So it's very easy to live on your past laurels, which is what Coke decided after re envisioning, saying, I'm not going to live in my past laurels because what got me here is not what's going to go take me to my future state. The shift of DNA, whether it is in the form of imbibing growth mindset to having a highly innovative and agile culture, in which if a product launch in the past used to take 18 plus month, now has condensed down sometimes to even less than a month. This has happened drastically from the background I've given you, and performance management system has truly been a driver and reflector of our growth strategy. We have definitely shifted away from the classical rating systems, which you just spoke about, and converted our evolution of a performance system in which it's an ongoing, continuous dialogue with the employee. And more importantly, bringing that conversation back in which the leader also gets to hear from the associate, how are they doing? And more importantly, how can the leader elevate his or her leadership style to be an inspirational service and at the same time growth provider to the employees? In a spirit of taking this shift, performance management has also helped elevate the culture by making sure that conversations about what the goalpost of the organization is not a one-time act. It is a continuous dialogue in the spirit of the work that matters the most, and we call it performance enablement driven strategy, in which the individual and the manager continue to talk about their goalpost and how we are doing throughout the year. And if the goalpost needs to shift in the middle of the year because of an external or internal factor, you come back and you really reshuffle or you, I would rather say, recalibrate the road to each to your end goal. So, in a nutshell, performance management system has truly been the spine or the backbone of driving this cultural shift of driving the growth agenda in the last 2 years of implementation. Vijay, back to you. I think Vijay is on mute. While he gets back online, I'd give all of you a little bit more flavor on the
Can you?
performance management system at the company that we launched about a couple of years ago. Hi, we're back. I was just
I'm back.
concluding my point, Vijay, on what
Sure.
the performance management system at Coke looks like today. A few measures, it's an ongoing process around capturing feedback on the work that matters the most. It enables a monthly dialogue, which is 360 degrees, in which, in an agile methodology, you're not only giving feedback about your team, but even the project teams that work with you. And more importantly, it allows you to even have an upward feedback from your respective team who's been working with you for different projects or work areas. So this definitely has been a transformational shift, and we are seeing progressive results on the same as we've implemented it in the last couple of years cycles.
Well, thank you, Manu. I think this transformation shift and innovation wouldn't have happened in Coke had you not moved to a more agile performance management system. Over to you, Nisheeth. Can you share, from your experience, many organizations, like GE, Microsoft, moved away from traditional appraisal systems and annual reviews as well as a last century practice. What do you think from financial services sector, given your experience in that particular sector?
Right. Thank you, Vijay. Hello, everyone. Performance management is something that, unfortunately, in most organizations is still wired according to the old world, and it's not the only it's not the only function. If we look at HR, a lot of our functions are built to support the organizations of the past. Now, the organizations of the past were all organizations built on hierarchy, where there was a pyramid, there was a org chart, and one person reported to another person. If you work in a complex organization, one person could report to 21 people as well. The way we work today is very different from that. So all companies still have their old org charts, but we work differently today. So we work in communities. We work collaboratively because we just cannot get one work done if we were to work on our own. So performance management as an application, just to kind of state the point, in a traditional performance management system, the goal or the objective that a person has is only visible between the employee and the line manager on any traditional system. There is no way that a traditional system asks for collaboration. It's not geared in the same way as we actually work. What does this lead into? So this basically leads into a situation where a lot of people, especially line managers, view the performance appraisal process as a waste of time. They view it as a process where it's an HR-based checklist that they need to fill. And they don't see value out of this whole exercise. And that's one of the reasons why organizations scrapped performance management and went into check-ins. I followed that for the last 4 or 5 years, starting from when Microsoft and Deloitte and all of these companies did away with their performance management systems. Some of them actually showed the costs that they saved by eliminating the process as the opportunity cost of the executives who were involved in the process. There is subsequent research also which says that organizations which completely did away with performance management saw a reduction in employee engagement scores. So I'm not sure if that's the way we would want to move to. We wouldn't take a trend if it's a fad. It needs to be proven. It needs to have business sense. End of the day, especially in financial services, a lot of people are motivated by the drive to perform. There are very clear black and white targets that you need to meet, like in many other industries as well. And at the end of the day, there is an expectation that I would be told how I have done. That's not the problem. The problem is people should be told what they are done, but not at the end of the year. So performance management has to be a more regular real-time system. Where
and Nisheeth, how do you capture how do you capture the continuous year feedback? Because one of the questions which is coming in from the screen of participants is, how do we capture this continuous feedback, and how do you ensure the goalposts not change?
Correct. So there are two bits to this. So one is the way we have to look at performance management as an alignment of interest between the shareholders and the employees. Now, once the budget is done, the budget doesn't change. So as the executives, we are expected to define ways in order to meet the budgets, even if the market situation changes. So it is our responsibility to plan around it. So targets very rarely would change once they are frozen at the beginning of the year and committed, and there are analysts and stock markets which are watching your performance, because every time you lower your outlook, there is an impact. So we are expected more to kind of find out how we can address the situation rather than change the goalpost. See, performance management is something which is a process. The tool that we use, and I've seen some queries coming around platforms and and the software, etc. The software is only a guide. The software is only there to support us do our job better. It is not going to do our job, at least in the near future. So what we would expect is for people to view technology as an enabler. There are tools available today which were not available even 4 or 5 years ago, which talk about social performance management, which talk about routine or regular check-ins between line managers and employees. And it also depends on the nature of your work. So if you work in IT or if you work in consulting and your work is predominantly project-based, it's a different ballgame altogether compared to the fact that you are a corporate banking relationship manager, where what you do is visible a few months down the line or possibly a year down the line. But that doesn't take away the fact that performance management and feedback has to be regular and routine. A lot of times people get confused by performance management being an event. It is not an event, it's a process. A different tool can support the process differently, but it's a year-round process. It's not something you do through 3 checkpoints in a year where you set goals, do a mid-year and do an annual appraisal, then you leave it. Personally speaking, I would still stick with a rating, at least for the near future, till we see how organizations that have done away with ratings or done away with appraisals have fared. There is merit in saying that the performance management process, the bell curve, and all of these lead to a lot of heartburn, and all of that is fair comment. But we need to be sure that the alternative that is in practice or in place is actually viable.
Correct. And I think at Korn Ferry, I mean, it does tie in with both your comments around what do we need to be for the performance management to be successful. One, it has to tie goals to organization success. Secondly, we have to differentiate performance and reward, and I'll come to that in a minute. The third one is actually continuous feedback, which both of you referred to as a way in which we can deal with both internal and external shifts to adapt our businesses. And the fourth one, but the important one, is around building manager capability. At Korn Ferry, our research shows that if an employee leaves the organization, we literally have to spend 60% of their yearly salary as a cost for the new person to get in. From your perspective, Nisheeth, how much time has an organization, from your perspective, spent on building the manager capability? Because you quite rightly said software is just a tool, but it also requires a managerial shift in thinking.
Right. So we started this journey about 2 years ago, where we looked at performance management differently. So in terms of the effort that we have put in so far, the bulk of the effort has been to make sure that the alignment and cascade of goals is properly done. Because even if the line managers are well trained in terms of how to do an assessment or an evaluation or a performance coaching discussion, unless the goals are aligned and proper, you would possibly be doing the right things for the wrong reason. So we've invested a lot of time and effort and attention into the performance planning process. So just to give an example of how rigorous it is, it goes on over a period of 4 months, which starts with a senior management 3-day offsite where we agree on level 1 balance scorecard, which is the CEO scorecard, level 2 scorecards, which are the direct levels, direct report scorecard, and level 3 scorecards, which are the third level, the direct reports of the group heads, as we call them here. Now, this process takes about 2 months, and we invite everyone to meet every other person, and we're talking about 67 people, where every one of those 67 persons talks to every other person to make sure that there is some kind of alignment, cascade, or interdependence that needs to be brought into their performance management process. Once this activity is completed over a 2.5 month period, we go back and start setting objectives, but then bring the group heads back into a room in the first week of January with the CEO and their direct teams. And we then start talking about key initiatives, which will help them meet the KPI. So it's not just what we will achieve. It's also about how we are going to achieve our objectives. And at the end of that, we come up with organization-wide action points and KPIs that we have. So we've just finished this whole process at CBD for 2018 last month. We are looking at 400 initiatives and about 200 KPIs in all that we are centrally tracking now. So performance management is also a lot about how you cascade and align yourself to one direction and one set of objectives rather than do everything. The next phase of investment that we have is going to come into line manager capability, but it will also be aided heavily by technology. A lot of times people may want to do it or may know how to do a performance appraisal process, but they're not supported or not helped by technology. These are the same people who have access to Netflix at home. And when they come in and start working on a performance management system on a legacy software, something like an Oracle or an SAP, and they realize how much is the gap between the user experience they are used to in their personal life through Facebook and Netflix versus what they are subjected to at the workplace in terms of what they have to do. So for us, it is an extremely important imperative that we improve the user experience. We have built some principles where no one should be required to click more than 3 times in order to complete a process. These are important things. We don't want a person to be spending enormous amounts of time on a system and get frustrated with the system and then leave the process or just do a half-hearted thing. We've gone through the whole rigmarole, making fields mandatory in an appraisal field. And what do people do? They put a dot, they put a smiley, and they move on. They find ways of circumventing the system. So the thought process is not to force people to do something because it's an HR mandate, but it is to help them do it through a tool that is easy to use. So one, to sum up, give people a tool that they're comfortable using. They don't need to be trained to use, and they don't short circuit or circumvent. Second, make sure that the alignment is absolutely right, because otherwise we are measuring not necessarily the right goals and the right objectives, and performance management is a cascade process at the end of the day. And third, also teach people how to manage performance through a coaching process, manage how to do these discussions. A lot of line managers don't have these kind of trainings given. A lot of high performers become managers because they were good at their last job and they've never been trained on how to manage these things. So at CBD this year, we have a program to run past 250 line managers, where we take them through a 2-day program on how to become an effective line manager and performance coaching, how to apply rewards. So for example, if we want to become a high performance culture and we differentiate bonuses enormously to the extent that a 5 rater or a significantly exceed gets 7.5 times what a meets expectation gets. So 100,000 versus a 750,000 on the same grade for the same job. And the line manager starts creating a socialist environment where he takes money from the 5 rater and gives it to a 3 rater. That's not what we want to do. So this whole mindset and the whole cultural implication of performance orientation is something that we would only drive by building capability in line managers.
Thanks, Nisheeth. And Manu, from your perspective, I can understand being a banker, the differentiation in performance can be very high based on ratings. But from your individually concern, on performance at times, how we are seeing differentiation kicking in with the bonus payouts. Are we moving generally in an aggressive direction?
So before I respond to your question on bonus differentiation, I'd add 2 pointers which have an alternative thinking to what Nisheeth just stated. One, definitely this entire phenomena of doing away with ratings could be considered as a fad, or it could be considered as a cultural shift in the way we look at organizations' performance till date. We've attempted to think the latter because we've used our performance management systems shift to truly drive a growth mindset behavior in the organization. And secondly, technology has actually been the front runner on enabling this change. I'm a strong believer of the fact that a strategy is as good as it's seamlessly implemented. And in the implementation or the rollout of a critical transformation like doing away with ratings, technology has to be the front runner. And for us, the success of doing away with ratings or creating this seamless, continuous performance dialogue has not only been elevated, but has actually become a part of the thread in which the organization operates today because the technology was simple, easy to use, and all what it did for a manager or for a people leader is to ask them the relevant question at different pit stops, which gives them 12 data points in the whole year for their associate or their employee when they're really taking the right decision around rewards. So there's that thread which for us is running around integration. And I'll use this word integration as I answer your question on differentiation. When you're thinking about shifting a performance-based process which is continuous, you have to integrate it with the way you reward or recognize associates, employees in the organization. And that integration is the key focal point of enabling differentiation. Let me deep dive or double click into what it meant for us. When we correlated this continuous performance cycle backed by data, which the technology that we used helped us drive for employees, the integration with rewards actually helped us and is helping us now to broad base the return on investment on the biggest investment item that we have on our OPEX line, which is salary and rewards. But more importantly, it also stretched what Nisheeth just stated, the manager's tendency to pay at a midpoint so that there is a socialistic culture and use really a make everyone happy feeling versus truly recognizing somebody who has gone above and beyond to reach the goals of the organization. And that differentiation, rather, in my mind, has been enabled or has been strengthened by applying the performance enablement framework for us. To give you further facts, in a past mode, almost 80% of the employees would be hovering somewhere around the median payout of 100% because that would be assumed. That's what you will get when you complete a year cycle. So it almost created a DNA of assuming that you're going to get recognized at least this much. And therefore, performance became a static. And the moment we shifted the goalpost to say, no, your opportunity to earn actually is not 100%, it is actually anywhere from a 0 to a 2x. The shift of DNA automatically started because now the organization's rewiring towards strategy, you exactly knowing how you're contributing to the strategy of the organization, and thereby getting that return of 2x or 3x is clearly measurable. So for us, differentiation in bonus payouts or in annual awards has actually got strengthened by doing away with the classical rating system and integrating it with that weave thread of how you look at a continuous evolution of performance. And this actually also answers a couple of questions which a few members who are attending us have answered. So we're happy to deep dive furthermore into a few of those.
Excellent. This question is for Manu. where do you see the future trends in performance management if we go away with the ratings and are in for continuous feedback? Where do you see the game of performance management 5 years from today?
Well, not holding a crystal ball, I would give you a version of a practitioner's lens. I definitely see the workforce pattern itself elevating or shifting towards project or goal post driven efforts. We all have been very classically conditioned to operate in organizational hierarchies and functional departments. That is actually in global corporations like ours really fading away, wherein we are looking at cross pollination and collaboration to be the first driver of growth. No more are you boxed in your sandbox to drive only XYZ results for the organization, but people are expected to roll up their sleeves and really cross pollinate to support the organization's growth agenda. If I broad base that to how organizations are shifting towards a matrix culture of project based deliveries, which many IT organizations have really tested, tried, and have been successful in, consulting organizations have gone ahead with it. We're actually following the lead there to actually make matrix as our organization pattern. And if I take that as the goalpost, that in the next 5 years, many such workforce patterns would evolve, which will be flexible, more closer to the work that matters the most to drive the strategy. I would say doing away with ratings that actually help benefit, and more organizations would go ahead and adopt a continuous performance discussion cycle as compared to a point in time rating. So my vote definitely in the years to come goes in for more and more industries and more corporates applying in the root and pattern of continuous performance discussions and doing away with recency based one-time performance feedback, which also sandboxes the mindset of a person to a great extent.
Can you also share a little bit around employee retention as part of this move? Because we see millennials, particularly in our region, having a mentality to gain more experience and have more fun at work, but at the same time, they tend to move jobs more more aggressively than baby boomers or Generation X. How has that helped you to retain the millennials?
A good question that you asked, and this is a test case for us, which we've been working on. We haven't got a foolproof method to the application as yet, but I can share with you what we have been evolving our thinking around. Millennials by design are more dedicated, and many of you who are listening in to us are millennials. You'll be able to relate to what I'm stating, that your loyalty and commitment is to the work, the passion the work brings to you, the energy which the workplace gives you in meeting or in elevating your life goals. And this entire concept of purpose-driven life goals is a lot more prominent with millennials of today. As long as organizations like mine or yours or many others are able to create the hook of providing meaningful, purposeful work, which engages and expands the limit of many such millennial workers for us, I would say the performance-driven culture can just act as an, I would say, supporter for it. Let me give you a live example. We've actually had some of the most critical positions in the recent past, wherein we have actually taken a risk, or I would call it a punt, on some young professionals who bring in diverse experiences from different walks of life, and have given them roles which are 2x to their imagination of what they could do. That has rather resulted for us higher engagement, not only for those individuals, but has also created an ecosystem wherein the performance management process is focused on the work that matters the most. When you're focusing on the work that matters the most and are in the roles where you're empowered to take those strategic calls, the engagement driver works automatically in a circular motion. It's contrary to the past fad wherein HR as a department would organize various engagement events Because for me, those are symptomatic engagement drivers. But the root of an engagement truly belongs to the work and then the manager and the leadership with which the individuals work. And our focus has actually gone to these two. So, in my mind, still the theory is yet to be proven, but our performance management system is rather helping us engage and retain millennials a lot more as compared to the past mechanisms where people were boxed, stated, and your relevance to the strategy was limited by the what the manager gave you to work on.
Excellent, thank you. Nisheeth, one of the discussions earlier you mentioned about training budgets and how you are adapting the flow of money into development. Is performance management for you identifying the skill gap on a 3-year strategy in your organization?
Yes. So we have taken a different view of training needs assessment. We are looking at strategy cycles and skill gaps, which kind of tally with the strategy cycle. And our investment on learning is basically around addressing the skill gaps rather than the traditional bottom-up process of training needs assessment, which was tied in with the old way of performance management. In fact, the trend that I'm looking at now is for performance management to become more of social performance management and get integrated with recognition rather than get integrated with learning and development. Learning and development would be something standalone as the way I look at it, and address the skill gaps that the organization has. Whereas I see a closer fit of social recognition with performance management as we make the whole process social. So the whole idea is to make my goals visible for those who will contribute in my success. Because I don't work only with my manager and only with my team members. I work with people who are outside of my direct reporting relationship. And at the same time, I need to reinforce the right behavior by providing recognition at the right time. And I would also want recognition whenever recognition is due for the work that I do. So I see a close integration between recognition and performance management going forward, all on a social kind of a model, where people are able to identify and praise and provide feedback on social networks rather than through an email kind of a system. And L&D would be slightly different, detached from the process, where we look more at skill gaps organizationally rather than at an individual level.
Well, it's great to see the social performance management kicking in. So we have a lot of questions coming in. So I guess a conclusion over here is largely around the future of performance management, where world isn't an annual cycle anymore for anything. And we may have a long way to go before a majority of organizations abandon annual performance reviews. We can see the back of it in the coming years, but that is a slow process. In changing the role, we have to invest in changing the managers in play who need to provide ongoing feedback, and open communication shouldn't wait for another day, but also tying in frequent feedback, open communications, and coaching would be the right way to go forward. And that can only help if we have the right technology in play to support us. There's no doubt everyone has to participate, be it millennials, Generation X, or baby boomers. Everyone has to come to speed with technology, but at the same time, making sure that we have a technology-enabled performance management will go a long way to maximize people development and improve the performance of individuals and the organization. So, time for some questions. Shall we take a few of them?
Sure. I think we've got many questions in the list. Vijay, you may steer the dialogue, and we can actually go around the table to answer them based on our experiences.
Okay. So I guess I'll pick some questions randomly from the chat window. A question to Manu: what are your thoughts around employer branding, and how has Coca-Cola India implemented that? And to what extent do you think it can drive high performance?
So here I would have a submission, which is what we call as progressive. In all honesty, we have done a fabulous job of representing our corporate brand, our company brand, and the products that we offer on the table. We have just started our journey of creating an employer brand of choice in the relevant stakeholder spaces. Because today, if you think of us, you definitely think of us as a leading consumer beverages service provider with some of the top brands that you have at your table every single day. But when we go out to the public and really ask them, what do we stand for as an employer of choice? It's a variety of highly energizing responses. So what we are working on today is converting that into our synergy and our theme of what our employer brand looks like. And more importantly, does it give us an opportunity to strengthen our view and vision for how we want to drive talent, not just in the company, but the relevant countries that we work on. So relatability and sustainability of countries' growth is an important part, and we are more driven towards creating an employer value proposition there. To your question on how has performance management system helped us, I would say with the recent changes that I spoke to you about, it has actually strengthened our positioning to be a front driver of experimenting and leading the change. And we've also been very transparent in talking to stakeholders at various forums on what have been the good, bad, and not so successful experiments that we have made with this change in performance culture. So I would say on both sides, progressive on the employer brand, and secondly, performance management system, I think it's only helping us strengthen our positioning to lead this change from the front.
Thank you. Nisheeth, this could be an interesting question for you. What would be your thoughts around paying for potential in today's world? I know we are linking performance and pay, but do you really pay for potential as well?
Yeah, so if you take any traditional system like a 9-box, there is an element of potential that is built in there. So people who are high potential and high performance would typically get categorized into the highest box. In our pay philosophy, we position our top talent basically on the inverted L of the 9-box grid on the 90th percentile, the high performers on the 75th percentile, and everyone else on the median. So from that perspective, we are in a sense paying for performance and potential as well. But the way we look at reward is beyond compensation. So for us, reward is development as well. So we have in our rewards philosophy, we have included development as a form of reward, and we have further differentiated the type of development an individual will get depending on where they fall in the talent segment. If a person is high performance but low potential, they get skill-based development so that they can do their jobs even better. But if someone falls into a high potential and a high performance category, they get leadership development, basically, which is preparing them for the next role. We have a slightly not so common view on potential because we look at future potential, not current potential. And it's a complex thing because a lot of traditional succession planning platforms or methods define a successor for a job 3 years from now. Now, it's not a static market. The job may look very different 3 years from now. So if we identify someone as a high potential and a successor for a job 3 years from now, especially in a fast growing environment, by the time we hit 3 years and the person is considered ready to do the job as was defined 3 years ago, the job may have changed. So we look at future potential, not just current potential. And we define future potential more in terms of learning agility and in terms of adaptability. So if someone's categorized high potential today for and is considered a successor to the head of retail banking, for example, we would also have to answer a question about, is this person flexible enough or agile enough to learn the trends in retail banking over the next 3 years and be in a position to take their job 3 years later if their job comes up. So it's potential, future potential, but primarily it's grounded in performance, because performance is the gate opener. If you don't perform, you don't get much.
And Nisheeth, one of the questions which is coming in ties to the discussions we had last week around artificial intelligence and robotics taking on more repetitive jobs. So the question by one of the participants is, don't you think machines or softwares are replacing employees? We can use the saved manpower at some other places.
It's a very interesting question. It's a very interesting question, and something that's very close to my heart for the last 6-7 months. I look at it slightly differently. Automation, machines, artificial intelligence will definitely and should free up our time. But that time should be used by us to do more value-added activity. So in terms of queries that we get in HR, a lot of those queries are routine, repetitive, procedure or policy related. They're not necessarily discussions that we have 4 times a day, which is about, okay, how can I help you perform better? How can I make you more effective at your job? How can we beat our competition? It's more around how many days of sick leave do I have? What kind of leave would I apply for if a relative passes away? A lot of queries are routine and transactional, and that's what we need to kind of do away with. And I would see machines doing that part of our jobs initially. We are a little bit far away from what is called general artificial intelligence, which would start doing things on its own. Right now, the stage where we are at is basically specialized or specific artificial intelligence. And we should view this more as a tool to improve productivity so that we can do more meaningful work. As in, who wants to answer the same question on leave 5 times a day or 7 times a day? Let a computer program or a robot do that for you. And we should be spending our time talking about business results. We should be spending our time talking about how we can create a more collaborative, more meaningful work environment. How can we engage people? So I would see it as a tool or a way to change the profile of the work that we do rather than reduce the number of people. So possibly we'll still need the same number of people, may not be the same number of people if we were to ramp up. If we automate a lot of these things through technology, we may not need to go 10x if our headcount increases by 10x. Maybe we'll need to increase only by 2x or still do the same thing with the same set of people. But the number of people who would remain in HR 5 years from now or 10 years from now should ideally be doing more value-added work, advising business, talking about business results and performance, rather than tackling routine queries. There are also things that human beings physically cannot do. For example, if you do an employee engagement survey on a traditional format where people write text comments, and to me, that's the most important thing, because someone has gone beyond their comfort zone of clicking on a radio button to actually write something for you, which is meaningful. A lot of traditional employee engagement platforms don't do justice to that effort that the employee has put in, because they don't have the intelligence to make sense out of the text comments. But if you look at the new age employee engagement tools, they come with natural language processing, they come with machine learning and artificial intelligence, and they can literally synthesize 5,000 comments in literally no time, because it's a program that does. So we have to use machines in addition to what we do rather than replace what we do. And I'm all for human beings and machines rather than machines or human beings.
Excellent. I guess with this, we have come to the end of our discussion. Sorry, I couldn't join via video, but I'm sure you're dying to see me in person at some point. But thank you all for joining us today. Over to you to close the discussion.
Thank you so much, Vijay. Thank you. It was really a fascinating session, and I love the way you put the content together, bringing the questions from the audience as well. And thank you, Nisheeth and Manu, for your interesting insights and sharing your experiences and expertise in this area. Thank you so much for being a part of this panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you,
thank you.
everyone.
And thank you everyone for being a part of this discussion. You've been a fascinating audience as always. I can still see 33 questions in that list unanswered. So what we will do is we will pick up these questions and share it with the panelists and request them to share responses to them as convenient to them. So we will try and get your responses. So don't get disheartened if your question was not taken. Um, with that, I think we've come to the close of this session. But before we close this session, I would like to share the secret code for this session for those of you who are participating in the leaderboard contest. The secret code for this session is hashtag PMS3. I will just repeat. This is actually performance management system, so it's the acronym there. So it's hashtag PMS3. So please key in that code and get your points on the leaderboard contest. And thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And we will see you on the other side of the networking break with our next session. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.